Before we start today's episode, I wanted to let you know this show works with an amazing company called The Midroll, and they help service advertisements for you, the listener. I just wanted to keep rolling. So that is what The Midroll helps me do. I want to be able to show you awesome stuff that is relevant to you, what it is you listen to, what it is you like. We're able to take that information and make it better as far as the ads are concerned. Just take a 5-minute survey. Go to podsurvey.com/words. You'll be entered to win a $100 Amazon gift card. Just go ahead and do that. There's something else I wanted to tell you. Now, it is brought to you by QuickBooks Self-Employed. If you own your own business, this is the best thing you can do for yourself. You make money, you get 1099, and then it's the worst thing of all time because you're like, I don't know how much I owe to the government. I don't know how much I owe in taxes. It's terrible. This takes all the guesswork out of that. Go to tryselfemployed.com/words and you can get 50% off of this thing. It's incredible. I use it and a lot of my other friends use it. Okay, 50% off. Now, here's the real start of the show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another, however you want to define it, episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I am your ever-present host, Ray Harkins, coming at you with a spectacularly awesome conversation with a person involved in independent music. The guest this week is Mr. Alan Day from the band 4 Years Strong. This was actually a listener suggestion that I have him on. And I was like, you know what? That's a really good idea. If you are listening to the show and you have ideas on people that you want to appear, email me, tweet at me. I'm pretty easy to reach. So just visit 100 Words Podcast. You can see there's a Twitter feed there. However you want to interact, throw me some ideas because I love having those ideas. And honestly, stay away from like Henry Rollins, Ian MacKaye. Like those are people I'm just not going to interview. They're great people, but they've been interviewed 400,000 times. And I like to dig maybe just beneath the surface. Maybe people that, you know, have been interviewed a million times over, but haven't been interviewed like this. But anyways, let's talk some business pleasantries. Let's talk some things that have been in my mind recently, and then we will dive into the show with Alan. If this is your first time listening to the show, welcome. Thank you. I appreciate that. I realize this episode may be popular. Alan and his band are quite popular, so dive into the archives. I got like 160 more of these. I encourage that. Visit the website, 100 Words Podcast. Email the show, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. Interact with the advertisers that are on this show because we have some cool offers that are floating around at the beginning of the show. You'll hear some in the middle. I really encourage you to do that. There's a reason that these companies are advertising on the show. They feel that speaking to you is valuable. And honestly, I wouldn't shill for something that I didn't think was cool. Like that's the beauty of the podcasting medium is, you know, the buck stops here. I make the decisions and I say, yeah, this stuff is cool. You should be paying attention to it, subscribing to it, doing it, whatever it is I'm encouraging you to do. There's a reason that this is happening. Recently myself, I've been feeling weirdly isolated. I am a very extroverted, outgoing creature. And I've just been really busy trying to help my wife in the school year write. She's a school teacher. And so I'm like helping her grade papers, helping her just, you know, be in an okay mental state because by the time June rolls around, you're done. You're exhausted. I mean, you remember when you went to school, you remember how you felt as a student. Well, teachers feel the exact same way. Like that, if that is something that's blowing your mind, they're human as well. And they feel the fatigue and tiredness. My wife has been having a lot of struggles with that. So I've just been trying to, you know, take care of a bunch of stuff. So because of that, I don't see many people and I work from home. So I don't see many people there besides my dog. And, you know, sometimes it's weird because you feel that isolation and you feel like you want to get out in the world. And then, you know, you exchange a few tweets with people and, you know, post a few messages on Facebook and what have you. And it mimics it to a certain extent, but you don't feel that nice connection that you have with a person when you just, you know, sit down for an hour, talk with them over coffee, whatever. You just feel weird sometimes when you don't have that on a semi-regular basis. Anyways, I was able to pull myself out of it, had dinner with a bunch of my friends, and it was great. It just gave me that nice injection of like, oh yes, people care about me. Like I am a part of this community, as it were. So thank you to my friends, the Gentleman Supper Club, for bringing me out of that little mental funk. Recently, I've been getting a lot of feedback from a lot of people that have just been discovering the show via different mediums, via YouTube, past shows, and the word kind of spreading organically. So I don't know. I feel like it's like hitting a nice little groundswell. The show numbers keep rising, and it's great. If you're a regular listener, I appreciate that. And if you are a first-time listener, I appreciate you as well. Pretty much on the same level. Alan Day, like I said, he's from the band 4 Year Strong, plays guitar, does some vocals. Yeah, I mean, as I admit to Alan at the beginning of the episode, I'm not a huge 4 Year Strong fan. Like, I'm not a devotee. And I kind of lumped them in as a sort of, B-rate Set Your Goals when they were originally coming out. Through perseverance and the fact that they are the real deal, I've listened to them more and I'm like, okay, I see what they're doing and I see what they're trying to accomplish. I had a great discussion with Alan where I could tell he liked the fact that he was speaking to a person who just wanted to kind of get to know him as opposed to like, oh man, that guitar riff on that one song is so sweet. Because, sometimes people that interview kind of, and I include myself in this, sometimes you get a little in your own headspace when you are a personal fan of what it is that's happening. Yeah, you kind of get, you lose the forest from the trees. You're so concerned about these really specific things, and sometimes you forget the general questions. So anyways, without further ado, here's my discussion with Alan, and I will talk to you after the end of the episode. Relationship with you and the band and stuff like that. So I'll be brutally honest with you in the fact that you guys kind of hit at a time where I didn't pay attention to you guys. I was aware of your existence. I was aware of your popularity. I was aware of everything you were doing because you were touring with a lot of friends' bands, but it was one of those things where I kind of put you guys in a corner of like, oh yeah, well, Set Your Goals exists already. So 4 Year Strong, it's just a B-rate version of that, which I mean, obviously,
yeah, I get it. Which we got from a lot of people.
Like towards, the beginning of the band, is it one of those things where you felt like you were just constantly trying to, I guess, not even prove yourself to the, fans at large, but just kind of be like, hey, we're more than just that sort of, stereotyped put in a corner band?
I don't necessarily feel like we were put in a corner. Like at the time, we were very aware of the similarities between us and other bands that were coming out. But like you said, you weren't all that familiar with us and you kind of just like wrote us off as that. And I think a lot of people did. Because at the time, when we were first starting out, we released, granted, when we first started out, I was a freshman in high school. So this conversation is of us starting out is more so us kind of coming off the ground, not necessarily just starting out, because we were putting in our hours for 4 or 5 years before anyone really knew our name. At that point, when we released our first record, Rise or Die Trying, and we were getting compared to Set Your Goals, I think it was a little bit of both, because we have since, become really, really great friends with Set Your Goals. It wasn't us just being compared to them. It was them being compared to us, too. And it was just like this weird thing. And at the time, we felt like, this is ridiculous. We don't sound anything like this band. And we know that they felt the same way. Like, what? We don't sound anything like this band from the East Coast, 4 Years Strong. And when you really listen to us back to back, it wasn't the same. But was the same is the ideals and the background in which we came from and the energy. And I think that's what people were comparing. On top of that, people need something to talk shit about, so they picked that, I guess.
No, honestly, that's true, because I definitely think that sometimes, not sometimes, I think a lot of the time, the narrative that gets obviously put forward from a band can sometimes, like you said, sort of outweigh the actuality of like, well, sonically, we weren't, I guess we were cut from the same cloth, but we didn't have the same stylings, so. Yeah,
absolutely. And we definitely had different signature things. Like we both came from like a hardcore background. And I think we had different sides of that we showcased in our music. Like at the time, honestly, I wasn't listening to a lot of like Minor Threat and like stuff like that. I was listening to like fucking Hatebreed and like these like bro versions of hardcore that was just like heavy and kind of arrogant and ignorant music. that was interesting to me at the time. And I heard Poison the Well opposite of December, and I heard the double kick drum on that, and it like changed our lives. We were like, we need to fucking go crazy with this and have fucking breakdowns and pop punk music. I mean, it was stupid, but at the time no one else was doing it, so we thought.
Right. Well, it's true, because I definitely think there is, for lack of a better term, like a more, I guess, theatrical, large. There was no subtlety in what you guys were obviously doing, especially on the first record. As you grew as a band, of course, that creeped in. But you saying that those bands that were obviously you were listening to at the time, and like, yeah, there's no subtlety within Jamie Josta's lyrics and or breakdown approach. So it makes sense that you guys were like, all right, well, yeah, how can we kind of, ramp this up to 11, so to speak?
Yeah.
Backing up, like you yourself, were you kind of born and raised in the Worcester, Mass area?
Oh, yeah. All of us in the band were. We all grew up. It's funny. Jake, the drummer, and I grew up literally down the street, probably 20 houses apart. And we knew, but the thing is, we knew each other. We went to the same elementary school, so we knew each other from like third grade and have had bands since then. But Dan and Joe also lived 20 houses away from each other in the same neighborhood, but didn't know each other until pretty much around the time Joe joined the band, which was when I was either a sophomore or a junior in high school.
That's really strange, because that doesn't happen.
No, I mean, the thing is, Worcester is so big and there's so many schools,
right,
that Joe happened to go to a private school. So he didn't go to the same school as Dan, which normally he would have. They didn't know each other growing up.
That's funny, because I mean, my only experience with Worcester is I for a long time I worked at that metal label Century Media Records, so I would always get sent out to of course the New England Metal and Hardcore Festival.
Hardcore Fest. That's coming up soon.
It is. It's just a weird impression of the city just to like descend on that weekend, because it seems like a completely dead area in that area.
Well, I was going to say that. It's definitely a bad impression of the city just coming to the Palladium at all.
Totally.
Let alone on that weekend, because, I mean, it really is. It's a dead, there's nothing around. Worcester's a funny city because even though the Palladium is almost smack dab in the middle of downtown Worcester, you'd think that would be the booming area of the city, but it's not. The downtown area is one of the worst parts of the city. There's so many amazing parts of the city. There's Shrewsbury Street, which is just filled with amazing restaurants. Worcester is just like next level on food. They have tons of good food.
Mm-hmm.
Touring bands must hate Worcester because the only thing they know is the Palladium, and they come through there and there's nothing. There's no food. There's nothing to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's very symptomatic, like you said, of touring bands. Like, I myself played in bands for years and toured, and like, you don't have a time to reflect on, the excitement that you experience when you're in a new city, and then you get to the venue and you're just kind of like, oh, this is in a really shitty area of town or whatever. Like, you don't have the time to like look at the cool stuff that everybody else does when they travel there for, tourist reasons.
Yeah. Not that anyone's coming to Worcester as a tourist, I guess, but.
True. So what was your experience like being raised in that in that town, in that city? Like what was your family structure like? Do you have brothers and sisters, and what was your family doing for a job as you were being raised?
I got two sisters, parents still together after however many years, still live in the house I grew up in, and my dad still has the same job from when I was growing up. My mom's kind of been from job to job, more so because she gets bored, not because she like loses jobs. She just she just likes doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And she taught preschool for a while. She does all kinds of stuff. But growing up, I personally loved growing up in Worcester. Don't have anything to compare it to, obviously, because I didn't I didn't move around. A lot of kids growing up, whether it's, their parents moving around for job purposes or whatever, moved around a lot as kids, but not me. I grew up here. Yeah. But honestly, I loved it, because if I had moved around a lot, I wouldn't be where I am today. That's for sure, because I wouldn't have, met the people I did when I did and started a band and whatever. But also growing up in Worcester obviously made the band because I met the people that also lived in Worcester.
Right.
But more so than that, a great place to have a band. It's big enough where there was lots of local bands,
Mm-hmm.
So getting to play so many shows with so many different bands every weekend was like what made our band.
Yeah, you had the ability to cut your teeth in a local scene before anything else happened for you guys. That's a really important point, because I think a lot of people, especially when you see some of the larger bands in this particular scene now, they like live all over the place, and a lot of bands aren't even identifiable by where they live. It's like you couldn't tell where they lived based on their sound or whatever. But yeah, no, that's a really important point, where it's like, yeah, you gotta suck for a lot of years,
which we definitely did.
Totally.
And the problem with us specifically, I'm sure other people are in the same situation, but you can hear how bad we sucked, because we've had the same band name since I was a freshman in high school. Like, we've never changed the name, like through different, like trying to find our sound and different members, like for some reason we never changed the name.
Right.
So it's all 4 years strong. So if you really dig deep, you can find some demos from like 2003 that were just, for the most part, I won't say they are necessarily bad, but they definitely don't sound like 4 years strong, especially the 4 years strong that people know,
Totally. Well, and I'm sure too, it's reflective of the time in which you were creating the music. It's like, you were not only figuring out how to play your instruments, but then figuring out like what bands you wanted to rip off.
Yeah, exactly.
Just because that's what you did when you were in high school.
Yeah.
I guess you would, hearing the way that you described your childhood, I would kind of paint it as a very, kind of suburban and sort of, I guess idyllic childhood from that perspective. So you mentioned your father had the same job. What was he doing?
I'm kind of lying when I said he had the same job. When I was really, really young, and I don't even remember it,
right.
He owned a trucking company called the Day Brothers. And it was him first. Originally, it was his father, and then it was him and his brother that owned it. To be honest, I don't know 100% what they did. Like I said, I was so young at the time.
Of course, yeah.
But then for as long as I can remember, he's been a parts manager at a Chevy dealership in Springfield. So he commutes an hour and 10 minutes each way every day for 25 years.
Very working class, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that's the impression I get of that city as well. Even though obviously it's suburban in nature, that there's a lot of people that do things with their hands to make money.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is me placing assumptions on you, but just kind of, looking at you as a person and kind of, the way that you display yourself, you seem like a very sort of active, outdoorsy dude. Is that reflective of kind of who you were as a kid as well, as far as like, were you playing a lot of sports and kind of, running around being crazy, or were you more of an indoor kid?
I was definitely outdoors and crazy, but not sports. Like, I didn't play sports at all growing up. I played one season of soccer, but more so, I'm assuming because my parents were like, all right, we got to get this kid on a fucking team of some kind, make some friends. I don't know, get him out of my fucking house. That's the only sport I've ever played. And it was, I rode crew in high school, but that doesn't really seem like playing a sport to me.
I mean, there's a team involved in that. It's just not
it's just not a classic
right. The classic American sport, right.
Yeah. And you know what? I didn't even row crew for all that long either. I did it for like a season or two. But yeah, I didn't play a whole lot of sports. I was always more the creative type, and like using my imagination and pretending I was in a rock and roll band in front of a mirror and going outside after watching Jurassic Park and pretending to dig up the street to find dinosaur bones.
Right.
I wasn't the sports type in that sense.
Sure.
I was always just doing whatever the fuck I felt like, really.
Right. Your sisters, were they older, or where did you land in the structure of the family?
Yeah, I'm the baby. I got two older sisters.
So yeah,
but we're all fairly close in age. Like right now, I'm 27. One is, I think, 29, and one's 30.
Oh yeah. Your parents were focused on having 3 kids.
Yeah, exactly. Which was nice. I mean, we hated each other growing up, obviously, as most siblings do.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember still my parents always saying, like, you gotta hate each other now, but you just wait. One day you're gonna be really close and you're gonna love each other and you're gonna hang out. Like, and it's true, we do.
Right. I love that they were like trying to share that perspective, probably in the middle of some really tense situations with you and your siblings.
Yeah. So it's and it's funny. I have very vivid memories of me and my sisters getting into these ridiculous fights when we were young. I mean, stupid, I couldn't remember what it would be about. but we would be so mad at each other, we'd hate each other. Then we would get in trouble and get sent to our bedrooms. But in the way that our house was set up, all the bedrooms doors were like kind of next to and across from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought that it was okay if we kept our feet in our bedroom, and then we would bring toys out into the hallway and all play together. So it was like this weird thing where we were so mad at each other, but when we were all on the same page and all in trouble, it like canceled it out, and now we like each other and are playing again.
You built the sense of camaraderie by the fact like, well, we're all in this situation together. I guess let's make the best of it.
Yeah, for sure.
And so like you said, you were very creative. Like, were you were you interested in kind of art, or did you find yourself like getting into video games? Like, where did you try to sort of harness your creativity, or was it simply role playing movies that you saw?
You know what? It was a vast majority of role playing movies I saw.
That's so good.
But did not play video games at all. We never had video game systems in the house growing up. When I was really good, we actually rented Nintendo 64 a few times from a place down the street that rented out Nintendo 64, which was the fucking best thing in the world at the time. Because I was a young teen, where video games were very popular and new for the most part, I guess. I mean, not really, because fucking Atari was a thing, but it was.
Well, it was new to you.
Yeah, it was very new to me, and I would play Mario Kart all day because it was so easy. As a novice video gamer, I couldn't get into the real intense games. Mario Kart was easy. Was
that a I guess decision on your parents' part that they were trying to encourage the fact that you guys should be playing with one another, so like the less sort of distractions? Because I mean that seems like a very specific thing, just to say like no video games in the house besides we rent it occasionally.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it was. I guess I never really asked them if it was a conscious decision, but it had to have been, because you're right, they were very common at the time, and all the kids at school had them. They had to have been doing it on purpose, because I'm sure I complained all the time and told them all the time how all of my friends have video games.
Right.
But I'm definitely glad at this point that that's the way it was, because I know people that are my age that still waste all of their time playing video games, and that's just not a part of my life.
Yeah.
Not that I don't waste time doing other things, because I do.
Well, yeah, everyone has their release, but there definitely comes to a point where you have to draw that line in the sand where it's like, okay, do I play 8 hours of Grand Theft Auto or whatever video game is part of the pop culture, or like, can I be productive elsewhere?
Yeah. I'd like to think that not playing video games growing up has made me more productive, but I don't think that's true. It's just made me find ways to be more creative in my time wasting skills.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So that, as you started to kind of, develop your identity in junior high and high school, like you mentioned, 4 Year Strong started basically in your freshman year. Is that kind of when you started?
Yeah, 2001.
For all intent and purposes, like 4 Year Strong is like the only band you've really been in, correct? Or is that like you said,
that's not true. I was in a band before that called the Shrimp Shack Shooters.
That is by far one of the best. Here, let me see if I can guess what you guys sounded like just based on the name alone.
Okay.
So this would probably be like late 90s, I would say, that you were doing this.
Yeah. Well, technically we were still a band in 2001 when 4 Year Strong started, but we quickly ended when I think 2 members from Shrimp Shack Shooters were in 4 Year Strong, and the other members were not. And I think there was a little bit of weirdness there, at the time.
Yeah. Of course. Anytime you start to see your friends do something else where you're just like, dude, what's up with that?
Yeah.
Let's see. So you guys might have sounded like, I mean, if you're from Southern California, like where I'm from, you undoubtedly would have had ska in the sonics of what you were doing. But
and we did.
Okay. I wanted to make sure that
only a taste though. No horns. Right. No horns. Just a little taste here and there.
Right. Maybe I would maybe compare it to like Suicide Machines in a way, where it's like you had ska parts, but you were still maybe trying to be aggressive.
But we weren't nearly as cool as the Suicide Machines.
Right.
Or as good.
Of course. Okay, cool. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that band name, because to me it always is sad when I kind of interview a person and they don't have like that sort of first really really funny band name experience, because I think that's just like character building in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you guys, so that was technically your first band. So you like, when was like your first show? Was that in like elementary school?
Might have been in in 7th grade.
Okay.
Middle school. So it was at a outdoor concert event in this town called Paxton, Mass, which was just a town over from Worcester, a bit more rural of an area, and it was just called the Paxton Summer Jam, and it was just one of those build a stage like
Right.
on wheels that just showed up into a park, and it was all just like it was like a town thing. It wasn't like a cool thing at all. It was like
it wasn't a fest.
No, not at all. It was like literally one stage, a bunch of local bands, maybe a cotton candy machine, and it was just an outdoor like family event in the town of Paxton. And yeah, we played our first show. It was pretty wild.
Right. It sounds like it.
I remember it pretty vividly, and there was an awesome technical difficulty. I bought a new amp right before, and like because I convinced my parents, like, guys, I'm playing this amazing outdoor show. I need an amazing amp.
Right.
Obviously. They took the bait and bought me a new amp, but I knew nothing about amps at the time. All I wanted was something big. Didn't matter what it was. So we went to this used music place, and I bought this Randall 212. I remember what it looks like. I don't remember what it was. I just had to have it because it had wheels on it. This is the real thing. It's so big and heavy that it needs wheels.
Yep.
So I got it, and the difference between that and the shitty practice amp I had been using up until then was that this practice amp had distortion on it, and we were a punk band, you need distortion.
Of course.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that that wasn't naturally what an amp sounded like, and we didn't practice before, so I brought this big old 212 to this show. We set up, time to play, and I'm like, this thing sounds terrible. It doesn't even have distortion.
Right.
I didn't know that you needed a pedal. It was a single channel amp. Had to play a whole show with a clean amp.
That's so good. I love.
It was terrible.
Dude, there's nothing that makes me happier than like kid logic. Like what you're describing there is it's so innocent and perfect because you're just like, oh, dude, if it's got wheels, like this shit rules, man.
Yeah, that really is why I bought the amp. I remember it.
That's so perfect. To me, it sounds like obviously in the trajectory of you playing music, and you were kind of exposed to, I guess, for lack of a better term, just like, I guess, independent music, like at a relatively early age, or where did that come from?
I've always been into music. Music has, and this sounds lame and it sounds like I'm probably lying, from as far back as I can remember and before, because there's pictures and home videos. I've always been interested in music. Like there's not a single home video that my parents ever took where I don't have like this plastic guitar in my hand, or I'm not holding a microphone pretending to sing in front of the camera. Like that's always been in my head. And part of that, I think, because my parents were always big music fans. They're not necessarily musicians. Like my dad knows how to play the guitar. My mom can sing. She's she's not tone deaf. So we were in a house that loved music, and there's always music playing. In the morning when you wake up on the weekends, there's always music playing when my parents are cooking breakfast and whatever. And my dad's always showing me all this music. And, so I grew up just around music.
Yeah.
And that just turned me into being obsessed with music. And so, when I hit the age of like, okay, fuck you, Dad, I'm not listening to your music. I got my own music. That's when like Korn, Limp Bizkit, and
Absolutely.
that stuff was like huge, and that was what I was into, and that was my first time finding my own thing, and
probably the first time that like your parents were obviously like, this is terrible, Alan. Like this is right.
Yeah, and parental advisory stickers on records ruined my life because they wouldn't let me have them.
Right. I was going to say, I was going to make the jump to conclusions of the fact that they didn't allow video games in the house. And I can almost guarantee that they would have had a problem with some of the records that you were bringing home.
Definitely the case, because I was obsessed with Korn for years and I never owned a record, or just my friends did. And I would like record tapes of it. And it's funny you say that, because it makes my parents seem like they were like super stuck up and like very, very strict, but like that's not the impression I have, you know? Like if I see a movie about these super strict, stuck-up parents treating their kids like they can't do anything, like I definitely didn't have that environment. It just happens to be the couple things that we're talking about.
I apologize for interjecting myself into this, but it's like, I mean, I have a 4-year-old kid, and it's like I'm constantly like thinking about the way that, you know, I'm parenting him and stuff like that. But I think it's a matter of like, what is defined as normal to you? And it's like, for you, your parents probably weren't, you know, being tyrannical in the fact that it's like, you were like, you're not getting a video game, Alan, and that's the last thing. And it's like,
yeah.
And they probably weren't being like, they're just like, oh yeah, you can't buy that record. Why? It has a parental advisory. Oh, okay, that's it. So you didn't feel like it was like this overwhelming burden, even though, you know, you were having a kid angst about it, but it wasn't like this hugely formative thing in your head of just like, oh, fuck my parents, I can't bring home Life is Peachy.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because Life is Peachy specifically was one of the first times where my mom like thought about letting me buy this album. So I bought it, but she said, you can't open it until your dad gets home from work and he approves it. Oh. Which again, saying that out loud makes it seem like my dad's this stickler that like, you know, if dad doesn't approve, he's going to take off his belt and, you know, but it wasn't like that at all. It was just like, you know, let's just make sure your dad's cool with it. And
right. Did it pass muster? Did it get in the house?
It did not, because there was a song called Porno Creep on it.
Right. I was going to say.
And I remember, I was like, damn, why did they have to name the song that?
The struggle of the teenage boy or girl, for that matter, trying to get a record in the house, and then it gets blown up because of a song title.
Yeah.
They don't even read the lyrics, and you're just like, oh, well, that's it.
Bullshit is what it is.
It is bullshit. And so then as you started to, like I said, you know, develop your own identity and you know, matriculate through high school and play in bands, obviously, or play in the band. Was it
at the time I was pretending to play a lot of bands. Me and all my friends would put on a Korn record and like, all right, you're Jonathan Davis, I'll be Head, you be Monkey, and we're just have these fake guitars and we just pretend to be in a band. You know, I was in 5th grade.
Right. Did your parents like? I mean, as you started to get, you know, I wouldn't even say more serious, but as you started to like, you know, play more local shows and stuff like that, and they started to see that your life was probably being consumed by it, were they ever like, ooh, I don't know, this is weird stuff that Alan's into, like I don't get it, or were they generally supportive?
Oh no, as far as music goes, they've always been like crazy supportive. It's, you know, when we were first playing shows at that age, they were the ones packing up their cars with our gear and driving us even out of state to Connecticut and Maine and all kinds of places. So they've always been very, very supportive.
That's awesome.
Once they realized that like it was a real thing and it wasn't just like a flavor of the week.
Mm-hmm. They realized you were committed to it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's because they had never seen me commit to anything. Like, you know, like I said, they had tried to get me to play sports just as an option. My dad has never been into sports. I think that has passed down to me.
Right. Right.
So it's not like they were forcing me to play sports, but I think they wanted me to have the option in case it was something I did like, you know, like we're not a religious family at all, but we went to church, and I you know, my parents tell me that they do it because, you know, they wanted to give the kids the option. Like that did speak to us, and that's where we wanted to take our life path. You know, they just always gave us a lot of options when we were kids just to see what we were all about. And sports was definitely not it for me.
I think that's such an important point. I'm glad that you mentioned that idea of being in an environment in which, you know, the whole role as a parent is obviously just to kind of like give a kid an environment to figure out what it is they care about, you know?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And then obviously, like you said, once you kind of keyed into the fact that playing in bands and music was your thing, they were just going to like, you know, do what they could to keep fostering that, as opposed to like, oh, I don't know, Alan, this seems like maybe you shouldn't play this show out of state or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And they were always supportive. Granted, they always also were screaming at me for not doing my homework and skipping class.
That was going to be my next question in regards to the fact, like, I'm sure your high school studies were suffering for all the shows you might have been playing, and your headspace was probably not there.
Yeah, more so the headspace. I mean, we were only playing shows on the weekends. Well, you know, senior year, actually, I missed a majority of the year touring. And that was some of our first full U.S. touring I was doing was I was still a senior in high school. And, you know, my parents would make me go around to all my teachers and get like homework assignments to do on the road and things like that. But
So you probably did like 3% of those homework assignments on the road.
honestly, I don't know if I did any of it.
Right. Because nothing sounds like more unappealing than obviously sitting on those long drives and crunching some numbers on math homework.
Especially on your first time ever doing it. Like maybe if I was taking some college courses right now, I could find a way to find it interesting to do on the road, because now the road is normal to me, that like doing something new could be interesting. But at the time, this was like, holy shit, I'm fucking traveling the country with all my best friends. I don't want to do this shit. I'm not some fucking high school kid right now. Right now, I'm in a fucking rock and roll band.
I'm doing this. I'm living real life.
Yeah. So it was definitely weird. But before then, you're right. My headspace was not in school at all. I don't know how I got away with it, but I listened to headphones through most of my classes. I would just sit there and fall asleep. School is not my thing.
Right.
And I like to think that it's not because I'm dumb,
Yeah.
but more so because, I kind of had a focus and I cared about that focus. It wasn't like I was pretending that I cared about something else, and really I just wanted to go home and play video games. I didn't care about doing my homework, but I was playing music like 4 years strong from when we started all through high school. I kid you not. I'm pretty sure, obviously I'm not to a T, I guess there's probably brain farting on the word.
Okay.
We practiced literally every single day of the week for at least running through every single one of our songs that we had. A couple covers, whatever. I like to think that that's what made us stand out from other young bands at the time, is like we cared about sounding really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't doing it just because we wanted to be one of those kids in a band. We didn't want to just be able to say we're in a band. We wanted to be a fucking good band.
Right.
So we practiced and we worked fucking hard. And I remember I was in ski club, and it went every Monday to Wachusett Mountain, and I was super psyched on it. I loved snowboarding, and I wouldn't go. I signed up for it. My parents were paying for it, and I don't think they know this, but I wouldn't go because we had fucking band practice on Mondays. I'm not going to miss band practice. Granted, we also had band practice Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday,
right.
But this Monday practice was so important.
Yeah. You're like this. Why would I do anything else? So that,
yeah.
I mean, I think that's a really important point that you're making there in regards to the fact that, even though you might not have had large ambitions for the band at that point, you were just you were like you said, putting in the work. We
were, and I don't want to make it sound like we were putting in more work than other bands necessarily, or we were the important ones. But it's what we wanted to do. It's what we cared about.
Mm-hmm.
Dan and I specifically, we would be together all the time, whether it would be like sitting at his parents' computer, like designing T-shirts, even though we didn't print T-shirts for probably years after that, or designing album covers, even though we didn't have an album, or going outside and taking pictures for things that we thought would look cool as an album cover, or it was always just band related stuff, always.
Right. So were you, in the way that you're describing it to me too, were you kind of by default sort of the, lack of a better term, like business guy? Because it definitely always seems to fall on usually the singer's shoulders.
Yeah.
So like, were you that guy that was like, booking shows for the band and like trying to, get the name out however you could?
Yeah, I guess a little bit. At the time, getting your name out was way less of a business and strategic endeavor. It was more so just literally giving people the demo.
Right.
And I did that. I was the kid that would go to Warped Tour every summer, a backpack full of CDs that I burned each one and handwrit every song title, and
yeah.
And I would hand out like 300 CDs, and I'd wait at the side of the stage and hand the CD to Jordan from Newfound Glory and Kenny from the Starting Line and Eddie from Taking Back Sunday. It's funny because since then I have toured with all of them. Right. So it's pretty surreal if you think about it.
Hey, I know you're not going to remember this, but I totally punished you and handed my demo CD to you.
And obviously now personally knowing them really well,
right,
I have told them that.
Of course. And they're like,
And
oh yeah, I
of
don't
course they're
remember.
like, oh yeah, I don't remember that. I most likely threw it away.
Yeah, you were probably signed to Roadside Records at that point.
Oh yeah, it's funny that everyone talks about Roadside Records because for a really long time, I thought that was just something that a friend of ours bands, one of the first tours we ever did, they came up with the joke. And ever
Right.
since then, I'm like, babe, that's their joke. They came up with that.
Totally.
But that's probably not the case.
Yeah, I definitely can't recall where me and my bandmates first started to use that, but it was definitely absolutely applicable. Just and like I felt like it was always out there in the vernacular. Like it just seemed to exist for years and years. But yeah, that's funny. You were like, yo, dude, why you ripping off my friend's local band?
But to speak of Roadside Records, I will say probably a majority of the time that we get handed demos, we listen to them. And I don't know if it's like a little bit inside us knowing that like that was us once and we would have appreciated it, but we at least give it one spin. I'm not going to lie, 90% of the time we do it, it's god awful.
Right.
But,
totally.
Not necessarily because they don't have any potential in their lives, but the thing they're doing right now is not good.
Yeah,
they haven't practiced. It's this day and age. A band, like I said, it's like people want to be in a band. Not everyone. I don't want to generalize and say there aren't any bands that give a shit, because there definitely are. But it feels like most bands of like people handing out demos on Warped Tour and stuff these days, it's so easy to be in a band. Garage Band exists. Like recording demos is so easy. It's such a universal thing, and there's so many bands, and it's just got to be so easy. So these bands, you don't have to be good to just do it. You don't have to care as much, it seems. But
yeah, well,
maybe that's just me being a bitter old man, because
No.
back in my day, we had to find someone that had like an 8-track recorder.
Right.
We didn't have fucking computers and GarageBand and this like easy way to do it. Like we had to fucking get out into the world and find someone that could like, someone that has a studio. Like
I'll record it in his living room. Like I don't care. Where does he live? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And our first demos, which I won't even call demos because they're not real, and I think Jake, our drummer, might still have one, but it was literally a karaoke machine with a microphone hanging from the drop ceiling in Dan's basement at his parents' house.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's how it was done.
Right. Well, I think I mean I would not classify you as a bitter old man. I mean I'm 34 and I'm still involved very heavily within the same music scene that we both exist in. I think it's a matter of the point that I always try to make. It's like it's like you said, it's much easier for bands to exist now because obviously the tools are there. Yeah. But I think the main difference is the fact it still needs to take work. Like you need to put in that I call it sweat equity, where it's like you have to put that in there in order to actually be a real band, for lack of a better term. It's like, yeah, you can sit there and whatever, auto tune your vocals or do whatever it is to the actual music and spend 9 months recording a demo and it sounds flawless, but then you get up on stage and you're obviously atrocious. It's like it's because you haven't practiced. That through line still exists. So I would not classify you as a bitter old man. I think you were just
thanks.
You're welcome.
Sometimes I feel like one.
I can understand. I think it happens to anybody that is over the age of 25 that's still involved with youth pop culture. It's like, I guess this is how kids do it these days. But
yeah, it's strange. And you were saying that it's so easy for these bands to spend 9 months recording a demo and make it sound flawless. But half the time, the demos I hear aren't even that. They don't even use the tools to make something great. They use the tools to half-ass something because that tool is there. Okay, let's learn this song and just play it once into these microphones and record it, and there it is. It's easy to record.
Right.
It's harder to make it good, so they don't do that.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's a shortcut. Yeah, it's a very good point. In almost in prepping for the interview with you, in almost every single instance of people speaking to you, everyone always references the meteoric rise of 4 Years Strong, especially in regards to the sort of the spotlight that was put on you after you guys' first release. But I'm sure to you it was just like, oh wow, like that's cool, people are paying attention now, because you'd been doing the same thing for kind of such a long period of time. So I'm sure in some respects, it didn't feel, I guess, quick to you, or did it? Was the fact that all of a sudden people gave a shit about you like really weird for you to grapple with?
No, I mean, it was fucking awesome.
Right.
It wasn't weird for me to grasp. No, because it was all I wanted the whole fucking time. It was amazing. But it was definitely not sudden for us. It didn't feel sudden at all. We did plenty of US tours where we were each, taking a 20 out of our wallet to fill the gas tank to get to a show where the venue was literally boarded up because it had been closed. Or getting to a venue and only playing to the bands and their girlfriends that were playing the local show. Like, we did an entire tour where we probably played to a quarter of the amount of people that would be at one show now.
Right,
you know?
Right. Cumulatively, the entire tour you played to 100 people.
Yeah, if that. I mean, that would just be like, that's a good tour.
Right.
So it definitely did not seem sudden to us. And it still feels like we're still growing.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely don't see us as like a massively successful band. Maybe that's because I always want to work to get to that next level. It's not, and not even necessarily in a sense where I'm like, I always need more, like I'm feeding off of it, but just like, I always want one more person to like the band.
Mm-hmm.
If we can achieve that, that's always great. So when we first started gaining success, I don't ever feel like we deserved it. Like, finally people are appreciating us. Like, it was never like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it also wasn't this like sudden, like, oh my God, this is amazing. It was like, okay, cool. There's a couple more people at this show. This is fucking awesome. Let's keep going.
Right.
And there are a couple more people singing the words. And it's like, oh wait, how did they know the words to that song? Granted, this was when the internet was first becoming cool. Mm-hmm. In the music industry. That was a huge thing for our band. I don't know if I always talk about the internet as like a blessing and a curse,
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously terrible for the music industry as a whole, but there's no doubt that, I like to think that maybe we would have been the one that got through all the dog shit.
Right.
The internet hadn't existed because we did work hard, but the internet made it so that so many more people were accessing our music and hearing it and downloading it and getting it from their friends' MySpace. And, it was definitely helpful for us. And when we were first getting popular.
Right.
And ever since, like you said, when we first started getting success, it was still very gradual up until I like to look at the span of our career as like a slow increase all the way up until 2011, when we released In Some Way, Shape, or Form, which
right.
was not received well by fans or critics. I really do think up until that point, it was always just getting better and better and better. It was always on its way up, so everything always felt so exciting. Things were never getting worse up until that point.
Right. You do feel like everything is still gradual, even though it's like there's more, chaos that surrounds you. You have to make more business decisions that you probably never even thought you would have to make.
Yeah.
But as long as you're feeling like it's like, all right, the growth is still gradual, because you always, I mean, I'm sure you've witnessed this with a lot of your friends, where it's like, anytime I see a band, even if I obviously have no personal connection to them, and I watch them just immediately hit the quote unquote scene where it's like all of a sudden they explode, and then I'm just always like, gosh, it's like, I just get scared, because it's like, dude, where are they going to go? Like, there's literally nowhere to go except down. And will those members be able to handle that blow when they're fucking 18 years old? It's like, no one can take that egotistical hit where it's like all of a sudden your shit isn't as cool anymore. It's like, it's scary, because then it's like, where's that 20-year-old going to end up? Like, are they going to end up a bitter old person working at Urban Outfitters? And it's like, no one needs that in the world at all. So
yeah, we were definitely fortunate to have mediocre success before people started hating us.
Right. No. And you brought it up, and that was going to be a question of mine too, where it's just like, you can, even like I said, as a person, on the outside, where it's like, I was never truly devoted to you guys as a band, but I paid attention to what you were doing. And then obviously, like you said, the 2011 record, where it was, critically panned, and your fans were like, yeah, I don't get that record. Was that
definitely no one got it. That's
right,
for sure.
right. So was that, did you have to do obviously a lot of kind of soul searching as that cycle was going on, where you started to, witness whatever, lower attendance numbers or just people, like you said, kind of pushing back on that record? But you guys obviously were like, well, that was the decision that we made. Like, where was your head at during that time? Was it pretty tough to kind of get through it?
It was very tough, but really it was a combination of a lot of things. It wasn't just this record. I don't want to say we all hated each other, but we had spent so much fucking time together for so many years that we were just sick of being on the road together.
Yeah.
And there were times where we wouldn't speak to each other for not all of us, but like there was a couple tours, like entire tours, where Dan and I would not directly speak to each other unless it was like, hey, can you open the door of the van?
Right. In exchange of information. Right.
Yeah, exactly. No like talking of any kind. No, it got tough. And they were the same thing with Jake and I, and same thing with Joe and I. There was always like one person on every tour where it was just like you couldn't handle it, and it got pretty bad. And when it was time to make that record is when we were like, okay, all this shit is fucking stupid. This is a big moment in 4 Year Strong history because we're very, very, very passive aggressive when it comes to dealing with each other.
Okay.
We have a really bad habit of being passive aggressive.
All right. So at the top of the show, I told you about something called QuickBooks. Now, I know finances and taxes are kind of the last thing you want to hear about when you're, relaxing, enjoying this beautiful interview. But trust me, it's something you need to be concerned about. At the end of the day, most of us are working for ourselves in some capacity, whether or not you have a full-time job and you do something on the side, like this podcast, for an example. I make a little money off this thing and I need to put some of it aside each month because otherwise I'm going to be screwed at the end of the year and I'm going to have no idea how much money I owe in taxes and all that stuff. But here's where the solution comes in. QuickBooks, self-employed, helps you figure that all out. It helps you keep track of your finances in relation to your personal side of things and the business side of things. Because that way, come tax time, you're just like, press a few buttons, boom, bam, done. That's it. It'll tell you how much you owe in taxes. It'll tell you how much you should put aside each month. It's amazing. Not only do I use it, but the record label that I help do some consulting work for, No Sleep Records, we use it as well. It's awesome. It's great. It's in the cloud. It's so easy to use. QuickBooks Self-Employed, okay? Just go to this website, tryselfemployed.com/words. And you will get 50% off this thing. 50%, that's half off for something that will make your life so much better. Visit tryselfemployed.com/words. 50% off. Your life will be better. Your finances will be in order. I mean, basically, you'll be a millionaire after you do this. Okay? So just do it.
This was the first time where we all kind of spoke out and got together, the four of us, and was like, things need to fucking change. Like, it's time to make a new record. We need to do something. Like, we need to change this. Maybe us hating each other at the time and being so sick of 4 Year Strong, not necessarily like as a whole, like 4 Year Strong is what's making us go out on the road and fucking hate each other. Like right. This is the one thing that we all have in common, that we love playing in a band, we love being musicians, we love playing these shows, we love our fans, we love so many aspects of it, but at the same time it's the one thing that's all making us fucking be in this band together.
Right. Well, yeah, at that point I'm sure there was that weird confluence of like, well, now I feel like I have a job and I'm punching a clock in order to,
the grass is always greener,
Absolutely.
So at the time, that's when it was a huge change where we're like, okay, we need to do something. We need to do something that feels exciting to us. We need to take a risk. We need to do something. And that was when, it was a long time coming up at the time, but that's when we all finally made the decision to part ways with our keyboard player at the time, Josh. A lot of talk of why that he was out of the band, and really it was a million reasons, but we did that, and then we all got together, the four of us, and was like, we need to this is it. This is our lives. We need to do it and love it, or we need to fucking stop. And everyone was kind of on the same page for the first time in a while, which was, let's do this. And at the time, making this 4 Year Strong record, it was not exciting to us for some reason. I don't know why.
It sounds like in what you were describing, obviously, to the lead up of the record, because at that point, like you were saying, it was, you guys in some respects were obviously going through the motions, because it's not like you necessarily, you enjoyed aspects of touring, but as a whole, you probably weren't feeling fulfilled.
No, even though the shows were better than ever, it wasn't as exciting as the first tours we ever did with no people at the shows. You know, there was just something off.
Sure.
And I think it was definitely being tired and hating each other more so than the band itself, but we kind of took it out on that.
Yeah.
And I guess we also creatively felt very stuck in a box.
Absolutely.
So that you know, that definitely fed the fire when it came to writing a new record. And like, we personally felt like making exactly what people expected, like Rise Are Trying 2.0 or Enemy of the World 2.0. That was us selling out. And because that wasn't who we were at that specific moment in time, that wouldn't have been sincere from us. And we felt like that was just fucking wrong.
Right.
And so we made this record. We fucking threw out the 4 Year Strong playbook and we just started from scratch. We were writing songs in a completely different songwriting like strategy. Like everything changed. And went for it. And it was very exciting. It was the first time that things felt exciting in a long time. The whole process was really exciting. We were working with a big time producer. We were in this awesome fucking studio.
Right.
For the first time in a while, even though, like I said, everything was always like gradually going up and getting better and better and better. This is the first time to us that felt like, okay, this could be fucking it. Like this could be our time.
Yeah, this is the next proverbial level, so to speak.
Yeah, and so it was really exciting. We really wanted to do it right in our way. Like we wanted to we really gave a shit. We really wanted to do something cool. And while we were writing, it totally felt like that. Like we were so excited. We would have band meetings where like, these are the fucking best songs we've ever written.
Right.
Like we got to take this fucking seriously because, you know, some people were more on board than others as far as like just even continuing at all, you know. So we had to sit everyone down and be like, who's in? Because if you're not in, we're fucking in, and we got to figure that out if you're not going to do it. And that's when everyone was like, well, fuck yeah, things have kind of been shitty for a while, but I'm in, let's fucking do it.
Right.
And we were all super excited for the first time in a long time. We were so excited about the songs, but this is kind of before we had recorded. This is when we just had been doing demos and everything felt really fucking cool. And then when we got into the studio and started recording, it just became even more exciting. These sounds that were coming out of the monitors were so next level good, and we were just so excited. And then the fucking record comes out and everyone is like, what the fuck is this? And it was just such a bummer to all of us, because though we should have 100% expected it because we made a drastic change, it didn't feel that way to us going into it. I think we put our blinders up and we took that and got angry because we released a song called Fairweather Fan
right.
on that record, and it's lyrically kind of just, I guess, about people kind of turning their backs on us when we felt like we weren't doing the same. We were able to put the song on the record because we had released the song long before the record was even finished, you know? And we were still in the process of recording, and that song just kind of came out and it got put on the album. Then people took that and was like, well, you're saying fuck you to us, and you know what? Fuck you.
Right.
And people were bummed on that, and it just like took this whole weird turn that we were not expecting. I think it's because we weren't expecting it. Was exactly the problem. We were so, like, the day we were like, okay, first song's gonna release today, I can't fucking wait for people to hear this and hear how much they love it. And it was just like, this sounds like fucking, what were people saying? Oh, it sounds like Nickelback.
Right.
We're like, what the fuck? Like, that's not what we had in our head. And like I said, maybe we had our blinders on a little bit, but that's not what we were doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, it sounds like the difficulty in what you guys were going through is the fact that it's like you said, you were excited about the songs, you were confident in the songs, and it's like, and then to have it kind of summarily push back on your face and be like, I mean, yeah, I'm sure now you can maybe reflect on the record and be like, okay, I can see why Nickelback is an extreme example, but it's like, I could easily see where people would be like, okay, like, you know, that's I guess an aggressive active rock record, whatever that may mean.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess in a way we wanted that too.
Right.
Because like I said, like we weren't in the same places in our lives we were when we wrote our last two records that everyone loved. We were in a different place. We weren't listening to anything that sounded like that. Like we were listening to rock and roll music. I
Right.
mean, we all listen to drastically wide varieties of music, and I think that has always been a part of our songwriting, but this, we just went off on a tangent, and we wanted to make a fucking rock and roll record. We didn't want to be stuck in this like pop punk breakdown thing,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, you can. There's only so long that you could exist like that before, like you said, it doesn't it doesn't feel fulfilling to kind of rehash that over and over. So, as you started to obviously have to tour the record and start to like get out there, not so much on I guess the band psyche, but like what did it do to you personally? Like, did you feel like like you said, were you angry and bitter? Like, how do I'm sure there was a full range of emotions you were going through, but where was your headspace at?
It was definitely angry and bitter for sure, and it led to us taking a lot of time off and us hating each other even more.
Mm-hmm.
And we never really broke up, but there were definitely like phone conversations where Dan and I were like, all right, fuck it, I guess we're just broken up then. Okay, bye. Like we were like girlfriend and boyfriend.
Right.
But we never like officially broke up. That never, the other members of the band probably don't even know about those conversations. But yeah, I was definitely fucking bummed, really, because music and being in this band specifically was, at this point, all I knew. And but it was also a really important time for us because it gave us a reason to kind of indulge in our personal lives, which I think was really important at the time.
The way that you just said that, like that gave me the fact you can indulge in your personal lives, like that to me makes it sound like obviously you felt prisoner. Like your personal life should be your fucking personal life.
Yeah.
Like and I just think it's a concept that gets lost on people where it's just like, yeah, you literally like touring and being in a band, like, yeah, it's an alternate universe. You're not living.
You're devoting everything you have to the road.
Right.
Really, because the music industry isn't what it was in the fucking 80s. And like our lawyer, when we first started working with him, actually said something really crazy to me. Well, it's not that crazy, it's true, but it just put things into perspective for me. He's been in the business forever, and he said one of the first times we met, the music industry is the opposite of what it used to be. Yeah, you were touring to promote an album, but you were really making all the money on this album. That's where the money was. So you're doing these tours here and there to like really push that moneymaker. And it's completely changed to the opposite. This album you're making is just so that you have something to tour on and make a living. And it's something to promote these tours, because that's the only place that the record labels and the bands and the managers are making the money, is live shows. Like that's the only industry these days. And that was interesting for me to hear at the time, and so obvious now.
Right. Yeah, you're like, okay, thanks for the advice, dude.
Yeah. Well, because, as a musician, I like to think that the music itself, like this shit I pour my heart and soul into when I'm making this record, like that's the stuff that's going to live forever. This one show isn't going to live forever,
right? But
this record is. So that's what the musician cares about. And really, I think deep down and at the end of the day, that's what the fans and the listeners care about too, especially in the days of iPods and Spotify, and that's what you listen to every day. Like 99.9% of the times you hear this one song is listening to the album, not seeing it live. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So how did you, there's two last things I wanted to hit on was like, I mean, for one, like how did you, as you started to kind of, come out of whatever anger and bitterness that you were, experiencing because of that record cycle. And like you said, as you started to be able to engage in your own life again, what did you kind of like, I guess for lack of a better term, like find out about yourself? Like, were there things that kind of, I guess, balanced you out as a person where you were like, okay, I'm like, my identity isn't just like, okay, I'm Alan from 4 Years Strong. Like, did you start to kind of like discover yourself in a way?
I think I just started to discover things about me. I don't think myself as a whole, because I think I discovered myself a long time ago, and I'm what I am, what I always will be. Mm-hmm. But I definitely started to find a lot more things that I liked, hobbies that I would indulge in. And I'm a classic, like, find something, do it, and move on in like a matter of fucking minutes. And I've tried every hobby there is because I'm just always interested in finding something that feels the way that music has always felt to me, especially in that time off when music was like the furthest thing from my head, and I didn't want a part of it Not that I didn't want a part of it, because I didn't ever stop loving it, but I was like, okay, well, I've been doing that for so many years. Let's try something new. I tried fucking, I'll just randomly go out and buy a bunch of supplies to try to do something, and then do it for a couple days and realize, yeah, I'm not very good at that. Okay, moving on.
I'm gonna make radios. All right,
Yeah,
that didn't
no,
work
like I tried like pinstriping, for a while. I tried.
What's pinstripe? I don't even know what that is.
Pinstriping, like it's a type of painting, like it's on like motorcycles.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and on like cars and shit. And
sure, got it.
There's a very specific way to do it, and it's very artistic and really hard. But
right.
I probably spent $250 one day at a craft store on all this shit. And I tried it, for like a week or so. I realized I'm not very good on it. And now it's literally in a bucket out in my garage right now. I haven't touched it since.
Right.
And I took lutherie classes to build guitars.
Okay.
Which that actually has been panning out, and is still very interesting to me, because I've gotten into carpentry as a whole, as a hobby. Joe, our bass player, is full on carpenter. He's really talented. He does it almost as full time as he does the band, maybe even more so. I've kind of taken that from him and turned it into a hobby, and I'm definitely on hobby level. I'm not nearly as good as him.
Right.
I was definitely finding things out about myself. I was finding out that I really liked being home, when before then, and still a little bit to this day, being away from home is more comfortable and more like being at home than being at home. But I was really starting to find out that I liked, seeing my girlfriend every single day, because we lived together at the time. And even though we lived together at the time, we probably hadn't spent more than a month tops straight together every single day. So, that was at the time, honestly, a pretty interesting period for our relationship as well. Because, we're still together. We bought a house. We're engaged, getting married in October. So I think it was a great thing for us at the time, too, because we'd started to – we didn't really fight a whole lot pre the 4 Year Strong break.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like the perfect fucking relationship. We never fought. Things were always amazing. But then we started to realize that the reason we never fought is because –
you didn't see each other.
we didn't live together so much, even though we lived together. We weren't with each other enough to like really start to get on each other's nerves about, you didn't fucking clean the dishes for a week straight, like this and that. And that's typical. That's standard living with a girlfriend or boyfriend or wife or whatever. That's part of it. You gotta getting to know all these things about each other and your lifestyles day to day. We were learning that at this time, which was so strange, because we had been together for 4 or 5 years already, and we were all of a sudden like, what the fuck is going on? And it put a lot of stress on our relationship. Finally, we got to the point where this big blowout, and it finally figured itself, well, not figured itself out, we figured it out, and all of a sudden things were better than ever. And that was, honestly, that was almost around the time that the band started kind of, we didn't start doing anything yet, but that was the first time when like we would start to call each other and be like, hey, so what do you think?
Do this? Yeah,
maybe like we'd get an email like, oh, this festival has made you an offer to play the show. And that would be the first time all of us would be like, oh, I don't know, you maybe want to do it. Could be fun.
Right.
And, so my home life was getting better, but almost that just made me want everything to be better.
Right. Did it scare you in a way? Like obviously once you guys started to, become more active, for lack of a better term, like did it scare you that obviously like things would start to feel different at home? Because I'm sure that there was maybe some cognizant thought in your head that would maybe cause a strain in the relationship or something like that.
Yeah, it definitely was in my head, but at the same time, my fiance knows that that's my life, music and this band, and we built a relationship, while I was on tour for months, and we wouldn't see each other. Like this might be a little bit too much information, but we were basically dating before we ever even kissed each other. Like we were talking on the phone every day. We knew everything about each other for like 3 months before we ever even like held hands.
Right.
Like it was an interesting way to build this relationship. And I think even for the relationship, being on the road can be comfortable. It's a little bit different now that we own a house and we have dogs and a cat, and there's more responsibility that now being away from home is like, well, fuck, I need someone to mow the lawn and you're not home, so I got to do it.
Right.
So it's different in that sense, but with actually like being able to enjoy each other, being on the road can be just as comfortable as being home, because we know that version of our relationship through the phone, and really sometimes I feel like we have better conversations when I'm on tour than when I'm at home spending every day with her, just because that's what we knew. That was the foundation of our relationship.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. While this last question is less quote unquote serious than the rest of them, I have to ask, where obviously you are extremely known for your beard, and that is like obviously a thing. Is there ever those thoughts in your head where it's just like, well, I gotta fucking keep the beard because like that's what people like know me for? Like, is there any sort of like identity wrapped up in the facial hair? And I know that sounds like a fucking ridiculous question to ask, but it's like, I mean, people have to like, they do have their attachment when they are like known for whatever look that they may have, and like if they divert from it, it's like, oh, dude, you're a hat guy now, or it's like, oh, you're a non-beard guy now. Like, so has there ever been a thought to shave your shit off and be like, all right, I am the reborn Alan, or is there just like, no, this is me. Ever since I could grow facial hair, this was me.
Well, before I answer the question, I have to just say, I'd say almost every single interview I've ever done, this question has been the last question.
Interesting.
And I wonder if that has something to do with every interviewer knowing that it's a ridiculous question, and they have to work up the courage throughout the entire interview to finally be like, okay, I gotta ask. The fucking beard.
I think I'll give you my own personal insight, because I was like, okay, like since you and I don't have a relationship, and a lot of people that I have on this show, I tend to like have been in the same room. I mean, I've been in the same room as you, but we just haven't met. So I was like, okay,
that's creepy.
Well, dude, we've been in the same. I know we've been in the same shows together. Yeah. I just stared at you the whole time. But I was like, okay, when can I pepper this in here? It's like I can't lead. You can't lead with it. Oh,
no, you can't. You know what? Hats off to the person that leads with that question. Like I said, I'm trying to get deeper than just like, oh, dude, your fucking beard. Like, I'm trying to like attach to the identity of the beard and you. And like, is there a cognitive thought that you put into your head where it's like, because of course, I'm sure there's some days where you wake up and you're just like, dude, this shit's gone, bro. Like, I'm someone new, or like I said, I just think that there's something there that I'm trying to tap into. I think if it were something that had to do with the band specifically, then I absolutely would have shaved it at this point.
Right. You would have shaved it in your,
to be honest, I don't give a shit.
Right.
If I know that sounds awful, like I don't care about fans, but fans shouldn't fucking care about what's grown out of my face. And I think it's all kind of within the band. The beard thing has always been like, God damn it, why do people got to bring up the beards? Who cares? But I get it. We all happen to have beards. But the funny thing about that is we didn't do it as a thing. Like, people's almost, or I don't know if people do think this, but I'm always afraid that people actually think it is a gimmick, or that it was, when we first started, that we're like, oh, let's do this thing. We're going to grow beards. And, I'd love to say that we were that smart about our marketing that we knew that this stupid little thing would have caught on and people would have talked about it and mentioned it in every interview we ever do for the rest of our lives. But we weren't. And I feel like the biggest idiot saying this out loud because of how in beards are right now. But like, having a beard is who I have been for not as long as I can remember, because, I remember things when I was 10.
Right.
But
you're consistent about the beard.
Since I could grow a beard, I've had a beard. Yeah. And I guess I don't like to think about it much or admit it, I guess. But when I was in high school, I actually had like really bad acne and like really bad skin. Mm-hmm. And once I could this is gonna sound like there's, I don't know, this is gonna sound so stupid, but honestly, when I started shaving for the first time in my life was kind of when I started to break out and things started to get bad.
Right.
And I saw every dermatologist, tried every over-the-counter thing. Nothing ever worked. And one day, I remember it. One day I decided, fuck it. I'm not going to wash my face anymore with any like fucking chemical that I'm supposed to apply to my skin in hopes that it gets better. And I just started rinsing my face with water every chance I could. Keep it clean and hydrated and but not using any soap, any chemicals, anything. And it just, then I also hated the feeling of shaving, so I stopped shaving.
Right.
And
well, no, that I appreciate that context, because it definitely, it makes sense, because it's obviously the way we look is a deliberate choice. And like, as much as we would like to pretend that there isn't, thought put into the way that we present ourselves, because obviously we're into punk and hardcore. Well, no, like that's a reality of being a human, and the way that you display yourself, and if you wear a man bun or not, like that's a decision. Those are all deliberate decisions.
And you know what? I fear that I walk around this day and age and people are looking at me like I do have a man bun, because
right.
because beards are so popular, and there's like stories on the internet of like people getting beard implants and like crazy shit, and everyone has a beard, and I'm just another one of those people. But to be honest, I don't really care, because like I said, it's just who I've been since I was in high school. But I'm not the only one that's like that. Like Dan, the reason he has a beard is because when he was in high school, probably right around the same time, his brother got leukemia. And so Dan was in the hospital for like ever. And that's kind of when he started to grow a beard. Wasn't because it was cool, but because he was in the hospital so much he could never shave.
Right. There's like tangible reasons that you yourself and obviously your bandmate can link back to the fact of why you currently exist in the beard ecosystem. It's not it's not for style.
And it's real. And then, cause when Dan's brother died and he had to go to the funeral, he's told me he felt weird at the time, just like shaving and like maybe like breaking out or something weird. So he just like cleaned himself up a little bit. And I know that was the first time a lot of people had seen him with a beard, and he's just had one ever since. And that's what's comfortable to us. It's not what's cool. It's just what we know.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Because of that, I've never had the urge to like, fuck you guys, I'm shaving this thing off, because that's not what it is to me.
No, well, I appreciate you honestly answering that, because I didn't want it to be cliched, because like you said, it has been asked before, but I don't think to the, I guess, the deeper extent that I at least.
No, definitely not. Most of the time, the question is, how do you grow such an awesome beard?
Oh, dude, yeah, kill me.
And my answer is the same every time. Don't shave. Shut up.
That's so good. Well, I really appreciate you hanging out with me. This has been a lot of fun for me to get to know you, and it was fun. So I appreciate that.
Ain't no problem. I had a great time myself.
So that was Alan, and that was the beautiful conversation that we had. I felt like I connected with him. It was a nice, if I were person to person with him, face to face, I would have definitely given him a high five or a bro pound or whatever it is that people do to one another these days that symbolizes a kinship, a friendship, something like that. So thank you to Alan. And I'm fairly certain a publicist helped hook this up. Yes, it was Austin Griswold. Thank you, Austin. I appreciate it. Thanks for hooking us up. Yes, visit 100wordspodcast.com. The producer and editor of the show is Tom Richfield. He's back home safe and sound from a nice tour, and you may get a little of him in a future episode, because I want to get his touring perspective of what it's like going to shows in the UK and never really touring over in Europe before. And so anyways, you'll hear a little bit of his dulcet tones soon, which means beautiful voice. Just subscribe to the show. If you're not doing that already, you're really missing out. So until next week, please be safe, everybody.